r/NoSleep. Posted by u/JJX. It's not safe in the woods. Camping is a great way to get away from a busy work and personal life, and just take a time out from everything, many said from what I've heard. I'm not going to say the name of the camping grounds in order to prevent anyone from going there. My name is Teddy Cole, and please don't fall for their tricks. I work at a small law firm in my hometown, so saying we're busy 24/7 would be an understatement. I graduated college about 3 years ago. I got the job with the law firm and I've maintained to receive Employee of the Month my second year working there. Exactly 4 weeks ago, I requested for some time off from the firm since it started getting a little stressful for me. Since it was my first request, my boss took me into his office and sat me down. "Mr. Cole, everything going all right? I saw your request to take a week off from work," he said, slowly tapping his pen against his wooden desk. "Yes sir. Everything is all right, just a little stressful for me, but I was wondering if I could take a small break from work to clear my head a bit," I responded while I sat my hands on his desk. He slowly nodded head, while he stopped tapping his pen against the table. "All right. Since this is your first request, I'll approve it, but once you come back I need you 100%, he said while standing over his desk and extended his hand toward me for a handshake. I swiftly stood up from the chair and gave him a firm handshake. "Thank you so much sir, you don't know how much this means to me," I said with a big innocent smile on my face. After that little encounter with my boss, I decided to leave work early and start packing. I made trip to the local supermarket and picked up a few things I would need on this getaway. Once I got to the market, I made it my mission to get everything I needed within 15 minutes. The supermarket wasn't packed, thank God. I made my way toward the camping aisle. All the small tents and blow-up beds sat on the shelves. Without looking, I grabbed a small tent for one person and grabbed a sleeping bag. I took a small trip over toward the hunting aisle and picked up a rather large hunting knife. As I made my way toward the cash register, the small blonde lady stood on the other side of the register and gave me a smile. "Good afternoon sir," she said, giving me a friendly tone. I gave her a nod of my head and pulled my phone out to check if any rain would occur. The scanner stopped beeping and I looked up at the clerk and gave her a raised brow. "Sir, are you planning to go camping?" Her smile slowly dropped to a frown. "Yes, is that a problem?" I said, quite annoyed at her invading my privacy. "Sir, I really think you should change your mind. Those woods aren't normal," she said, looking me in my eyes with a cold tone. "I'll be fine, just finish ringing my items?" I said, growing more irritated. As she finished ringing the items, I paid and left the store. I started my drive toward the camping grounds. While the comment from the clerk stayed in my mind, I tried to push them away as I wasn't gonna let her words ruin my getaway. It was around 5:39 when I arrived to the grounds. I parked my car in the parking lot and unpacked everything. I slid the hunting knife into my sock and set out for the trail. As I entered the hiking trail, the atmosphere changed, like I wasn't supposed to be there, but I kept pushing on. While I walked deeper into the trail, I saw less and less people. The less people around, the better, right? It had been 30 minutes of me walking deep into the ground where I couldn't see anyone for a while. I strayed from the trail deeper into the woods and took a deep breath of the fresh air. As I pasted by some trees, I saw a squirrel struggling to climb up its tree. I slowly approached it. I got onto my knees and slowly sat my hand on the ground in an open palm motion. The squirrel slowly approached my hand and smelled me, as I rose up to place the squirrel onto the branch. As I turned around to walk deeper into the woods. "Run. Or die." A deep voice came from behind me. I spun around and looked around everywhere to see who made the voice. I looked back at the squirrel. It sat on the tree branch where I left it, staring back at me. I brushed it off as me being paranoid and kept walking. I stopped walking after about 5 minutes and started to set up camp along a riverbank. After I finished setting up the small blue tent, I sat my sleeping bag inside the tent. Afterwards, my stomach started to rumble and growl. I stood up from my tent and walked around the area gathering twigs and sticks. I gathered some stones and built a small fire not too far away from my tent. The fire sizzled and popped, while the flames from the fire danced and soothed in the sun's rays. Walking toward the river, I dove my hands into the cold water. Feeling something hard brushed aside my left hand, I slowly grabbed it and pulled it out of the river. A bone, a small frail bone. I dropped it aside the river and fell on my butt, backing up from it in shock. I felt a strange feeling inside my stomach as I slowly turned my head around. 3 small rabbits stood on their hind legs looking directly at me. I stood up and slowly walked toward them. I tried scaring them off, but they stood still as a statue, like I didn't faze them. I slowly reached down to the rabbits and reached out for them. The middle rabbit hissed and snarled at me before the 3 rabbits ran into the tree line. As it got darker, I sat by the fire rubbing my eyes. I decided to call it a night and climbed into the tent and zipped it up and climbed into my sleeping bag. I was awakened by loud footsteps coming toward my tent. I sat up from my sleeping bag and rubbed my eyes. The wind howling into the dead of night. I slowly grabbed my hunting knife and slowly opened the tent. I peeked my head out and saw something horrifying. Not even 40 meters away from my tent, the same 3 rabbits and the squirrel stood side by side with each other. More animals came from the tree line, but they weren't animals. Their eyes were replaced black and big holes with black liquids oozing from their eye sockets. Their fur was rough and rugged. They was chanting the same thing. "Master's gonna get you," in a deep twisted demonic tone. As the squirrels and rabbits grew larger in numbers and in size, I stood in shock as I heard big footsteps from behind me. I slowly turned my head around and set my gaze on a very big buck coming from the tree line. It stood on its hind legs, its fur was red and twisted its head 360 degrees. Its eyes were glowing white and its antlers had sharp knives on the tips of its antlers. I heard small screams of pain behind me. I turned my head around to see the rabbits and squirrels ripping off their fur and skin. Brownish humanoids came out the bleeding ripped skin. The buck started to run towards me as the small brown humanoids came closer to me, still chanting the same chant. I raised my hunting knife and managed to stab one of them in the head before making a break for it. The footsteps behind me got distant, but I knew they were still chasing me. The bigger footsteps never stopped chasing me. My lungs burned, my legs felt weak. I wanted to turn around and accept my fate. But my body wouldn't allow me to stop. I guess my own body knew I was feeling this way out of exhaustion. I slowly turned my head as I ran. It was still chasing me, but the only thing that was different was its face. As it chased me, its face turned and twisted into a distorted smile. It knew I was scared, and it thrived off my fear. I felt my body in the air for a couple seconds before I hit my face against a tree root. I shot my head up and looked at my feet. A root coiled around my right ankle like a snake. I grabbed my knife and started hacking at the root. The tree hissed and snarled its chipped snagged teeth and tried biting me. I hacked the root and rolled out the way. I quickly got to my feet and started running. I turned my head again to see the damned thing still after me, but this time he is getting closer. I stumbled and almost tripped, but I felt something hard run into me. Like a very heavy freight train. I was face to face with whatever that damn creature was. It scratched my face and clawed at my throat. I tried pushing it off, but it overpowered me. With my free hand I frantically felt the ground for my knife. I grabbed the handle of the knife and jammed it into the face of the creature. Black liquid sprayed and oozed out of the wound and it fell back. I took the chance and rushed to my feet and started running toward the parking lot. The whole time the creature screamed in agony. I didn't turn back, but instead I ran faster from adrenaline. As I got near the parking lot, the heavy scent of blood and death mixed with each other. I wanted to stop and vomit, but I kept running until my car was in view. Running past all the dead bodies and items scattered everywhere. I ran toward my car and almost ripped the door off its hinges and threw myself into it. I fumbled and dropped my keys. Before picking them up I heard slight tapping from the roof of my car. I hurried and grabbed the keys and shoved it into the ignition, twisted and turned the keys and backed up. As I looked up, all the animals were standing on their hind legs waving at me with big disoriented smiles. The only creature that wasn't smiling at me was the buck. It still had my hunting knife in its face. Before it could move, I slammed my foot on the pedal and sped off from the camping grounds. That happened about 7 months ago. I haven't told anyone in fear they might think I'm crazy. Nobody looked for the bodies if there were anything left. I still sometimes at night hear something call my name. I don't know if I'm being paranoid or going crazy. Please don't make the mistake I did by going camping. It's not worth dying over.